Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is Gittin daf Yud Daled. We are at the top of daf Yud Daled at let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines down. And what we have established yesterday is this interesting situation where if just to use the three of us that are on the Zoom at the moment, if I were to have $100 stored with Moshe and say that I want Moshe to give, and I say that this in front of Stan, and I want Moshe to give the $100 to Stan, then it's as if Stan already has taken possession of that property without doing any action. There is no further action that's required. It's already as if it belongs to Stan, and so that's the situation that we've been talking about, and now we're going to deal with certain examples of when that has happened and see whether it is actually consistent with this rule or inconsistent with this rule. So we have the first of these situations, and again, 11 lines down, the Aleph Lamed in the third thing from the end of the line. So Amar Rav Acha Bardala. So Kaba de Morika Isli Gabach Yave Lefloni. Listen, I've got a kav of a morika of saffron in your custody, so I want you to give it to this other person. And I'm telling you this in front of that other person so that I'm not going to retract. Okay, so what is the implication? So the fact that he references specifically the fact that he's not going to retract implies that he has the ability to retract, which implies that the third party in whose presence this is said has not in fact taken possession of it. So doesn't this seem to contradict the understanding of the fact that we can do this three-person transaction, that I can say that something that I have with somebody else should go to a third party, and if I say it in front of all three of us, if I say it directly, then it's as if the third party has already taken possession of it. And here it seems like that's not the case because I have the ability to retract. So Kamar, no, in fact, I don't have the ability to retract, and this is exactly what I'm saying. Dvarim halalu lo nitna lechazara. It's not that I'm not going to retract, but I could retract, but because I'm doing this in front of you and in front of the other person, I don't have the ability to retract. So as Rashi puts it, it's right opposite the Gilyon Ashas in the right-hand column. Because I'm telling you this in front of him, I don't have any ability, that you should give it to him, right? That I don't have any ability to retract what I had said. So Ha'amar of Chista, Ha'amar of Chada Zimna. Now, one second, Rav already told us this rule one time, right? So why did he have to say this to Rav Acha Bardala? What's the point of that? So the Amar of Huna, Amar Rav, Manali v'yadcha Tanehu Liploni b'ma'amad shlashtan kana. Right? That was his statement. His statement had been that if I say that I want to give a mana that you're holding of mine to a third party, the third party acquires it. So why did he have to talk about the Rav Acha Bardala situation that he could not retract the gift? So Imahi Hava Amina Hani Mili Matana Maruba. Now, if I had just had the original statement of Rav that was talking about amana, I would think that we're talking about amana. Well, amana is pretty big. So about matana mu'etes, slowly by lefanav. Maybe a small gift wouldn't require the third party's presence. So kamash malan, not so. You actually need the third party's presence to be there. Okay, so now Hanu Ginoi. So now we have a next story. So there were some gardeners, some some people who managed some gardens. The Avid Chushbana Bahadi Adadi. They had done some joint business with one another, and they were doing some calculations afterwards as to who had the money and how much they owed. Pash Chamesh Istere Zuze Gabi Chadbinayu. And they figured out that one of them held an extra 5 zuz. So Amri, so they all said to the guy who was holding the extra 5 zuz, Yavina nihale lemari ara, go give it to the person who owns the land, and that way, we'll all get a credit on our rental payments. So ba'ape mari ara, and they said this in front of the landlord. The kanamine, and so as a result, the landlord and moreover the kanamine, and the landlord actually did a kinyan in order to acquire it. So now what the question is? So Lusof Azal, but now what happened is in the end, the guy who thought that everybody thought he had extra money, he goes va'avad chushbana ben delay l'nafshe, and he does his own analysis. He basically checks everybody's math. And lo pashka beg lo midi, he didn't have anything extra. So Asla Kameh to Rav Nachman, so he went in front of Rav Nachman to ask, what should I do? I'm in this stuck situation. How do I deal with this situation? Because after all, they had all made a not only did they do this statement in front of him, but the guy even made a kinyan associated with it. So how am I supposed to, what am I supposed to do? So Amrleh, my yivadilach. So Rav Nachman said back, look, I don't know that I could do anything for you because Chada de Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav. First of all, we have Rav Huna's statement in the name of Rav that if you say something in front of the third party and in front of the person who's holding your stuff, that in fact the third party has made an acquisition. And moreover, he made an actual act of acquisition, presumably through some sort of chalifin, that where he would take something and give it to you, and you thereby allowed him to acquire this property. So Amrle Rava said, 1 second, Atu Haimika Amr Lo Yavina. 1 second, is this person who's come to you saying that he doesn't want to give the money? No, that's not what he's saying. The Leka Gabai Kama Amr. He's saying, I don't owe the money. He's saying, I don't have the money, I didn't get actually the 5 extra that everybody else thought. So Amrle, so Rav Nachman then explained, 1 second, if that's the case, Im Kain, Kinyan B'ta'o, so then the whole structure of this transaction was just a mistake. And any kind of kinyan that was made in error, then you can go back on it. You can reverse it. So as a result, it's not a valid kinyan. And so therefore, we are, okay. And Tosfos here, if we take a look at the start of the Tosfos, lo pashka be below midi, perish Rabbeinu Chana v'chein Rabbeinu Tam shahayu bale dinin modin lo. We're talking about a situation where everybody now recognizes that in fact there was this mistake, that the other gardeners all recognize that in fact this was a mistake. And it's basically the landlord saying, listen, you already gave me the money should belong to me, I made a kinyan, I should be able to get it. And now everybody else is saying, no, it's not actually right, you don't actually get it because that kinyan was based on a false understanding, and everybody agrees that the false understanding was the case. So that's the story there. So again, we've had now 2 situations. And in both cases, we've once again confirmed the concept that if I have something in your possession and I tell you that I want you to give it to a third party, and I say that in front of the third party has already taken possession of it, and it's as if it already belongs to him. So, Itmar. So now we're going to discuss again another situation, and to understand whether or not there's some ability to retract. Because again, we said that you're not allowed to retract. So what if you, instead of saying, right, so in the situation that we've been talking about, we've been saying that you should give the funds that I have, that, the Moshe should give the funds that I have stored with him to Stan. But what if I don't say that? What if I say that he should just take the funds that I have to Stan? And obviously he should give it to him when he gets there, but I don't actually convey the requirement to actually give. Is that something less, and therefore I have an ability to retract? Or am I stuck with the same rule that Rav Huna said in the name of Rav, that it's as if I have already given it? So, Itmar, holech mana leploni she'ani chayev lo. So go take this money that to the person that I owe, right? So Amarav chayev ba'acharuyuso. So the person who sends the money, meaning me, if I'm sending the money, if I ask Moshe to bring some money to Stan, I am still responsible because I owe Stan some money. So I'm still responsible for the money until it gets into Stan's hands. But I don't have the ability to retract my having handed the money over to Moshe, because once I hand the money to Moshe, so then he is effectively on some level an agent for Stan, and so I can't just get that money back. So Shmuel Amar, but Shmuel, and if we take a look at Imbal Achzor, Velomar Hachziram Li Shema Yansenu Yansu Mimcha B'derach Eino Choser, that Rashi explains that even if I'm concerned that Moshe may not be the most responsible and may lose it along the way, I don't have the ability to retract. That is the position that Rav had. And again, this is a little bit different from the situation. This is not where, Moshe was holding money that I, of mine already, but rather I give the money to Moshe, and now I say, you know what, I regret having given the money to you. I really want to go and deliver it myself, or I want to, pay FedEx to deliver it, etc. But Ushmuel Amar, Mitosh Shechaya B'Achariyu. So Shmuel says, look, I am still obligated if anything were to happen to the money. And given the fact that I am still subject to responsibility for anything happening to the money, im balachs or choser, if I want to retract, I should be able to retract. Lema b'hakamiflaki. So let's say that this is what they're arguing about. Demar sabar holech kizachi dama. Dummy, that Rav, when he says that you can't take it back, it's because when I say to take it, I mean that you should acquire it on behalf of Stan. And so as a result, when I give it to you, you've acquired it on behalf of Stan, and therefore I can't take it back, even though I'm still responsible. After all, Stan didn't appoint you as his agent, and so therefore he can't be responsible for, if you're negligent. And so as a result, I need to be able to, so I can't take it back because it's already Stan's, and I can't, and yet I'm still subject to liability if anything happens to it, because Stan didn't make you, Moshe, his official agent. Umar Sabar, on the other hand, Shmuel says the following: no, when I say that you should take it, it is not as if I'm telling you to acquire it on behalf of Stan, and therefore I have the ability to retract. And of course, that's why I also am subject to responsibility. And so it all works together. So the Gemara answers no. you don't have to say that that's what Shmuel and Rab are arguing about. Lo tekuli al mahola kizachidami. You can actually say that everybody agrees that when you say that you should take it to somebody, you're actually telling them to acquire it on their behalf. And this is what they're arguing. Mar Sabar, Rab thinks, lo amrin and migo, that we don't say the word since. What's the migo? Migo is when you have, since I could have said X, you should, when I say Y, you should believe me. Well, what could I have said? I could have said that, I'm sorry, we could have said that since we don't say that since I'm liable for the mana until it reaches you, I have the ability to retract. Umar Sabar, and when Shmuel says that you can retract, Amrina Migo, we say that since I'm still subject to the liability, I have the ability to retract. So it's not about a statement, an alternative statement that I can make, but since I am subject to the liability, then I'm going to be able to retract it. So, and Tanya Kavasi de Rab, we actually have a statement that is consistent with Rab's opinion, namely that that it's as if I say, when I give you something, when I give the money to Moshe to take to Stan, it's as if I'm telling Moshe to acquire it on behalf of Stan, and I don't have the ability to retract. Because what does the Brisa say? Tanya Kavasi de Rab, Holik mana leploni sha'ani chayavlo. Go bring this $100, this money that I have, that I owe Stan to him. Or if I were to say, Tain mana leploni shani chayev lo, or if I even just say, give it to him, right? So obviously, if I say, take it, if I say, give it to him, then it's even more so. But it doesn't make a difference whichever language I use, holech mana leploni b'kodon sheyesh lo biyadi, or if I say to you, give this mana, that belongs to him that he gave me to watch over. Tain mana leploni pikadon sheyesh lo biyadi. Again, or give, Stan gave me $100 that he wanted me to watch. He didn't give it to me as a loan, but he gave it to me in order to watch. Again, in all of those situations, chayev b'achrayu. So I am still subject to any kind of mishap that happens along the way between when I give it to Moshe and when Moshe actually gives it into Stan's hands. But at the same time, in all four of these situations, if I wanted to change my mind and say, you know what, I don't want Moshe to give it to Stan, I want somebody else, or I want to bring it myself, I don't have the ability to retract. And so again, we see all of these situations are all along the lines of what Rav said. So now the Gemara is going to ask, well, when Rav made that statement, he was talking about a loan, but a pikadon maybe is different. Pikadon, the Gemara asks, le malay ein ritzono shiyahe pikadono biyad acher. Why can't I say to Moshe, listen, when Stan gave me the $100 to watch, he wanted me to do the watching. He didn't allow anybody else to do the watching. So why, maybe I should be able to get it back, because really we should follow Stan's desires that I be the watcher. So Amar Rabbi Zera, Kishahuchzak Kafran. It's a situation where I have been determined to be a liar. That in a past case where I had watched over somebody else's object, I had denied the fact that anybody had left it with me, and it turns out that I was lying, that in fact the thing had been left with me. And so as a result, in that situation, Stan will certainly prefer that Moshe watch over the object rather than I, who have been caught lying about other pikadons and as Rashi puts it, kafran, but pikadon, right? So I've been found out to be a liar in another situation where I was a custodian. In which case, Stan certainly prefers that it be out of my hands. And so as a result, so that's going to be the situation. And indeed, that seems to be the way we paskin. So although in general, if I were to give money that I owe Stan to Moshe, I wouldn't be able to retract it. If I were actually giving him something that Stan gave me to watch, as opposed to borrowed funds, then the only time that I can't get it back from Moshe is if I, in fact, have been caught lying. But if I haven't been caught lying, then I would be able to get it back, because I could legitimately say that, hey, Stan doesn't want somebody else to watch it. Stan wants me to watch it. And so as a result, I am the one that is responsible, and therefore I could take it back. Okay, so now we're going to have a story along these lines. So Rav Sheshes Habale Ashrasa Desarbale B'Mechusa. So Rav Sheshes, had given some coats, has given some materials to some people to sell in Mechusa. So Amrle Rav Yosef Bar Chama. So he said to Rav Yosef Bar Chama, who happened to be going to Mechusa, so Bahani de Osis Aisinu Nialei, when you come back from Mechusa, can you do me a favor and bring me my money? So Rav Yosef Bar Chama, he went to Mechusa. Yavinu, and they gave Rav Yosef the money that was owed to Rav Sheshes. So Amri Lay, and then they said, one second, one second, we want to acquire from you, we don't want to be responsible for anything that were to happen along the way. After, right, in some ways, the person, this fellow was Rav Sheshes's agent, so maybe we don't want to be liable for anything that happens along the way. So Amr Lahu, yes, I'm willing to take that responsibility. L'sof ishtamet lahu, but in the end, even though Rav Yosef had agreed to take on the liability and that they should no longer be liable, he did not, in fact, obligate himself to them. So ki asel legabe, and well, when Rav Yosef got back to Rav Sheshes, Amarle, Rav Sheshes said to him, Shapir Abadta, you did the right thing. Delo shavis nafshach, because you shouldn't be responsible. So because Eved Lova le'ish malva, right? A borrower is a servant to the lender, and we don't, you shouldn't, you don't want to be a borrower if you don't have to be. And so as a result, you shouldn't make yourself into the borrower. So Lishna Achrina, another thing that Rav Sheshes, alternatively, Rav Sheshes may have said the following: Shapir Avadet Eved Lova le'ish malva, right? A person is a servant to the lender, meaning a borrower is a servant to the lender, and so as a result, and so therefore, you did a good job. So the point is that either way, clearly he did a good thing, that he avoided his own responsibility. Now, the interesting question is who would be responsible if anything had happened in this interim period? Because after all, Rav Sheshes had sent him to bring the money. So it's an interesting situation. It seems like that they would still be reliable until the money got to Rav Sheshes's hands. Okay. So now, again, we're dealing with these situations, and the question is the consistency with the rules that have established. So Rav Achi Beret Yoshia Havale Ispika Bekaspa Dinaharda. So Rav Achi, the son of Rav Yoshia, had a silver vessel that he had put with people in Naharda. And so as we turn to Yudal and Bet, so Amr Lahu Rav Dustai Bar Rabbi Yanai Rabbi Yossi Bar Kiper. So he tells Rabbi Yossi and Rav Distai, he asks them, Bahadi de asitu asyua nihale. When you happen to be, I know that you're going to Narda, so when you come back, can you bring it to me? So Azul Yave nihale, and so they went to the people who were holding on to the silver, and Amrulahu, and the people who were holding the silver, they said to the two rabbis, so Nikne Minaichu, we want to acquire from you, meaning that we want you to take the responsibility. So Amrulahu, no, we're not going to take that responsibility. So, because at the end of the day, they're also doing the custodians a favor, because the custodians are still responsible until it gets back to the owner, to Rav Achi. So Amri Lahu Adre Nihalan. So if that's true that you're not going to take responsibility, give us back the silver. We don't want you to take it. So Rabbi Distai, Rabbi Yanai, Amr Lahu Ein. So Rabbi Distai said, okay, I'll give it back. But Rabbi Yossi Bar Kippur, Amr Lahu Lo, but he said, I'm not going to give it back. After all, we have the halacha that Rav said that one who gives a deposited agent for delivery to its owner is not allowed to retract it. So Havakumitzarulai. So they started to attack him and cause him pain because he wasn't giving it back. So Amrulay, and they said to Rab Dustai, who had agreed to give it back, Chazimar Heikin Kavit. Look at what this guy's doing. He's not giving it back to us. So Amrlahu, Tav Ramulay. Yeah, you give him a good beating. That you're actually doing the right thing. So Kiyasul the Gabe. And so obviously in the end, they went back and they gave back the silver, and now they come back to Rav Achi, and Amrulay and Rabbi Yossi Bar Kippur says to Rav Achi, listen, Chazimar, look at what this guy did. Lo mistayeya, the lo sayayan. Not only did he not help me, but Ella Amrlahu Nami Tav Ramulay. They told him he was encouraging them. So Amrulay, so Rav Achi asks, I don't understand. So Amaiti Abid Haki, why'd you do this? So Amrulay, Otan B'nei Adam, Hain Amma V'chova An Amma. These people were really big. These were Amma people. And if we take a look in Rashi, first of the narrow lines, Anshe Midos Gavoim B'koma, they were very tall. And when it comes to V'chovan Amma, Afmel Busheyan Mu'uyamim Mishar B'nei Adam, and they were wearing clothes that were made me very much afraid. Umidabrin Mechatziyan, and they would speak from halfway. And Rashi explains again. Now we're 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi. Kolomar Kolan Ava Menira Hadiber Yotzim Tiburan. They had very deep voices, so it seemed like they were very, very powerful individuals. So the Shemoseyan Muvoalin Arda, and their names were caused fear. Muvoalin, the Shemoseyan Muvoalin, and their names were caused fear. And what were those names? Arda va'Arda Ufili Beresh. They were Arda, and Fili was the guy in the head. So Omrin Kifoso Koftin. And if they tell and if they seem to be the kinds of guys that if they were to tell people kafoso, koftin, then if they tie up this person, they would immediately tie him up. Omrin harogu horgan, and if they were to tell somebody to kill someone, they would kill that person. So ilu hargo es dustai, and if they had murdered dustai, minasan liyanai abba barmos kamosi, and if they killed me, who's going to give my father another son like me? Meaning, I felt that my life was in danger. So Amrulay, so Rav Achi, in trying to confirm that Rav Dastai really should be afraid. B'nei Adam halalu krovim l'malchus hain. Were these people connected to the government? Amrulay hain. Yes, they were connected to the government. Yesh lehan susim ufradim shiratzin achareihem. Did they have, people following them? Did they have horses and mules that, come behind them, either to honor them or to indicate, that they had support? So Amrlei Hain. So the guy said yes. So Amrlei Hachi Shaper Abad. So then you were doing the right thing. You're absolutely right that although in fact there is this rule that Rav said that if you are given a pikadon to return to its owner, you should not give it back to the person who's the watcher. In this situation where your life is at stake, you should give it back, and it was the right thing to give it back, and therefore it was okay that Rav Destai said, was essentially saying, not because he actually meant it, but because he was trying to avoid anything bad happening to himself, that, give a good beating to Rav Yossi Bar Kippur, because he was not doing the right thing, and because he was taking his life into his own hands unnecessarily. Okay. So again, now the Gemara is going to talk about this question of whether or not, if I say that you should take money to somebody, am I telling you that you should acquire it on their behalf so that it all is as if they already own the money now? So holech money leploni, if I tell you to take money to somebody, v'halach l'bivikshu v'lo matzu, and then they could not find the right person. So I tell you to go bring it to George, and it turns out that unfortunately, as Rashi explains, v'lo matzu shemes, it turns out that they couldn't find him because George died. So now the question is what happens to the money? So Tani Chada, we've got one brisa, Yachzor l'mishalech, you should send it back to the sender. V'tanya Idach, and another brisa, l'yorshe mishin ishtalchulo, you should give it to the heirs of the person to whom it was sent. After all, the person that I sent it to died, and so now we should give it to that person's children who are inheriting him. So we're going to now have 4 efforts to try and explain this apparent conflict between these 2 brises. So Lema Bahai Kamiflagi. Explanation number 1 is to say that in fact, let's say that these 2 brises are arguing and actually have different authors who have different viewpoints with respect to this question of holech mana leploni, that if I give money to somebody, is it as if I said that they should kizechidami? Is it as if I said that they should take possession over? So Demar Sabar, so the one who says that it goes to the heirs, holech kizechi. If I tell you to take it, it's as if I said, acquire it on behalf of somebody else. Umar Savar, and the one who says that it goes back to the sender, the first one, Holech Lav Kizachet. We would say that taking it is not like saying that the person should take possession, and that's why the person who passed away has not, in fact, taken ownership, and therefore the person who passed away does not take ownership, and therefore it does not go to the heirs, it goes back to the sender. So that was explanation number 1. Now the Gemara is going to say, no, doesn't have to be that way. And we're going to offer explanation number 2. So Amar Rabbi Abba Bar Mamel, no, Dekuli Alma Holech Lav Kisachi. You can actually say that everybody agrees that when you take it, we're talking about a situation that it's not as if I'm telling you to acquire it on behalf of the recipient. The low kasha. So now why is it, you might then ask, well, 1 second, why do we have these 2 brises with this differing positions? It's not a problem. Ha bivari. The one with the situation is where the person who sent it was in good health. And as a result, that's why it goes back to the sender. But the and the second one, the second brisa, is talking about a situation where the person who sent it was on their deathbed. And if a person is sending something on their deathbed, it's as if I think we saw this yesterday. It's as if it's a written and delivered contract, meaning that we have a special rules associated with deathbed gifts in order to facilitate transfers at the most difficult times. And so as a result, because in that situation, when the person is on their deathbed, if they send it, then when they say that you should take it to somebody, it's as if they said you should acquire it on behalf of that person. So that's explanation number 2. Explanation number 3, Rav Zvid Amar. Rav Zvid says, no, you don't have to say that that everybody agrees that holich is not like zechi. Really, we could say hava habishchiv minra, that every case is dealing with somebody who is seriously ill. V'ha de'isei lemekabel b'shas matan maos, and the situation where it stays where that goes to the recipient's heirs, that's where the person who is the recipient, if I say to give it to George, if somebody who's on their deathbed, I should say, says that you should give these funds to George, and George is still alive, well, then the agent has taken possession on behalf of George, and so when George dies, it goes to the heirs. And on the other hand, if George had already died when the person on their deathbed gave the agent the money, or told the agent to take the money to George, well, then the money goes back to the sender's family, because after all, George was already dead, so the agent could not take possession on behalf of George. So Rav Papa offers a 4th explanation. Hava habivari. That really, in both cases, we're talking about a healthy person. The one is in a situation where the recipient dies during the lifetime of the donor, and and the other situation is where the donor died during the life of the recipient. And so as a result, if in fact, because we have another rule that when a donor's instructions were valid at the time of his own death, his heirs are obligated to carry them out. And so as a result, when the person, even though he was healthy, says to the messenger, listen, take this $100 to George, and then the person dies before the money is brought to George and before George dies, then there's an obligation for the person's heirs to fulfill the obligation to give the money to George. And now when George dies, the money belongs to George's heirs. So we've now explained in 4 different ways, the last 3 of which do not involve a machlokas about whether or not we say holech kizechi dami. Indeed, we seem to be saying in each of the situations that holech is not like zechi, and so as a result, we do not have to say that holech is like zechi. And so that is the understanding. So we tried to say that holech kizechi dami is in fact a machlokas tanayim, and we said no, you don't have to from these 2 brises say that in fact it is a machlokas. But now we're going to try again to say that holech kizechi dami is a subject of a machlokas tanayim, and we will be successful in that regard. So lema holech kizechi tanaihi. So let's say that the halacha of whether or not, when I tell you to take something, it's as if I told you to acquire it on behalf of the recipient. Let's say that that's actually a machlokas tanayim, because to Tanya, we've got a brisa holech mana leploni. If somebody says that you should bring a mana to this person v'halach uvikshu v'lo matzu, and you go and you look for him, and the person can't be found because again the person's already dead. Yachzaru l'mishaleach. Then you should return the money to the sender. Meis mishaleach. If the sender has also died, if the sender has died, but not necessarily the recipient, well, then Rab Nosson, Rab Yaakov, Amru, Yachzaru l'shaleach mishaleach. You return it to the inheritors of the sender. The Yesh Omrim l'yorshe misha nishtalchulo. But some people say that you should return it to the heirs of the person to whom it was sent. So again, there we see that we have a machlokas about who gets it. And obviously, in this case, we're clearly talking about one situation. You can't change the facts in the middle of the story. So, and we have another opinion. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi Amar, Mishum Rabbi Yaakov, Sha'amar Mishum Rabbi Meir, Mitzvah L'Kayim Divrei Ames, that actually we have an obligation to fulfill the words of the deceased. The Chachamim and the Chachamim Omrim, Yachloku, actually we divide it. You divide the money between the heirs of the recipient and the heirs of the giver. And we have another opinion. V'chan Amru, and here in Bavel they said, Kol Masha Yirtza Shaliach Yaseh. Actually, in the end, the agent can do whatever he thinks is best. All right, so we've got a lot of different opinions, and now we're going to break them down to show how they highlight that, in fact, we have this machlokas over holich kizachi. Is saying that you should take it to somebody, is that like you saying that you should take possession on his behalf? So Amar Rabbi Shimon Hanasi, Rabbi Shimon, I'm sorry, and now we one last opinion. Amar Rabbi Shimon Hanasi, and Rabbi Shimon Hanasi says, Al Yadi Hayamasa va'amru. This is what happened in a situation. I had a similar situation, meaning I was the agent in something like this, and this is what they ruled in the case. Yachzaru l'yorshe mishaleach. Go return it to the heirs of the sender. So my love, doesn't this all indicate that this is a machlokas of on this specific point, on whether or not holich kizachi? The Tanakama sabar holich lav kizachi. That the first opinion, which said that the money gets returned to the sender, so that must be holich is not like zachi. After all, the money goes to the return to the sender. Rabbi Nassan, Rabbi Yaakov, nami holich lav kizachi. And then Rabbi Nassan and Rabbi Yaakov, who say that if the sender has also died, the money goes to the sender's heirs. That's also, it must be that the holich is not like zachi. The aval gav demis, and that's true. Excuse me. Even when the sender has died, even though the recipient may have been alive at the time. V'lo amrinan mitzvah l'kayim divrei ames. We do not say the concept of that there's an obligation to fulfill the words of somebody who has died. V'yesh omrim hola kizachi dami kizachi. And the Yesh Omrim said, no, it goes to the Yorshe Mishin Ishtalchulo. It goes to the people who, to the inheritors of the recipient, the heirs of the recipient. So when the agent was handed the money, it must be he acquired it on behalf of the recipient. And so the heirs of the recipient are the ones who get it on the person's death. And then the next opinions, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Amar Mishum Rabbi Yaakov Sha'amar Mishum Rabbi Meir. And when it came to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's statement, who says that we carry out the words of the deceased, he must say holich lav kizachi, that we don't say holich is like zachi. We don't say that when I say you should take it, it's as if I told you to acquire it, because if the sender were still alive, we would return the money to the sender. But now miu heicha demis, where the sender has now died, amrina mitzvah l'kayim divrei hames, we say that you should fulfill the words of the mace, and so as a result, we give it to the recipient's heirs. And then finally, the chachamim yachloku, the chachamim say miskaf misafkalahu. They say that you should divide it because they're unsure about these two issues. Do we say that holich kizachi, or do we not? And do we say that we uphold the words of somebody who dies or not? V'chan amru, and now when we say what the halacha is in Babel, Shuda Adif. We're saying that we give it to the agent's discretion. We want to, that's the best opinion. So Rabbi Shimon HaNasi, Masa Asul Ashmeinan. And Rabbi Shimon HaNasi tells us what, in fact, the rule was. So doesn't this all show that there's a Tanai, machlokas Tanaim about whether Holach is like Zechi? Well, for the answer to that question, you're going to have to stay tuned to tomorrow's daf. Needless to say, you can take a look and see that the next word is the word lo. So we are not, in fact, going to say that this brisa shows that it's a machlokas Tanaim. We're going to see that, in fact, everybody could agree, but we'll see exactly how that happens, how everybody can agree with this concept of whether Holech is like Zechi. For that, you'll have to stay tuned, God willing, to tomorrow's daf.
Thank you, Rabbi. See you tomorrow.
Have a great day. Tomorrow will be both in person and over Zoom, God willing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.